Les said one of the things that signing Bobby Wagner does is make sure you don't have to play against him as the guy who designs the Rams offensive game plans. I imagine that's one of the primary appeals for you.
It is. And I also think it's very helpful that the familiarity, just playing them when we have twice, 3 times in 2020, you just have tremendous respect. There's a couple guys in this league that you get a chance to go to after games because you respect their body of work, the way they approach it, not only physically, but also mentally. And Bobby's always been one of those guys, just a lot of respect for everything that he's been asked to do in that defensive system, Greg. And it's definitely a benefit not having to play against him. And he's one of those guys that can fit in any sort of system. And I also think the leadership was a real big part of it. We're losing some big time locker room leaders. When you look at what Andrew Whitworth meant to our football team, when you lose a player like what Von Miller's meant, I thought Eric Weddle's leadership during the playoff run was vital. And to be able to have a guy that will be thrust into a leadership role based on the nature of how you communicate from that middle linebacker spot, but then also just who he is as a human being. There's a lot of positives, a lot of reasons you can be excited about Bobby joining the Rams.
And building on that leadership factor, you've gone predominantly with younger, less experienced guys at inside linebacker during your tenure. Not all of them, but a lot of them. What's it going to mean to have a 10-year veteran, one of the best players of the 2010s, leading that defense, probably wearing the green dot, all that kind of thing?
It's going to be big, and I also think it's huge for Ernest Jones because he's a guy that we have, a lot of the reasons why we drafted Ernest Jones when we did was because he had some traits and characteristics that reminded us of Bobby. And so to be able to pair those two together is something that we're really excited about. And there's going to be a nice spin that we can put on, some of these different personnel groupings to take advantage of getting our best 11 on the grass. And, that's always a product of, what's the offense presenting and then what are the different situations and how Raheem and the defensive coaches want to activate them. But it's a big deal and, really excited about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stu. Sean, just from a big picture standpoint, when you guys kind of pivoted your approach in free agency after Bond's decision, what led you to targeting, Allen Robinson and the wide receiver position specifically and the skill set he brings, and then also on defense, Bobby and his skill set and what he's
Yeah, I think, what you're always looking for, Stu, is a way of putting together your most competitive roster and then also addressing some of your needs with the different avenues that you have to onboard players. And obviously it kind of caught us a little bit off guard losing Vaughn. He'll do a great job in Buffalo, but then you're saying, okay, is there really anybody of his caliber at that spot when you do have a lot of confidence in a Justin Hollins? And we all know what a great player Leonard Floyd is. And so felt like that was a necessary pivot. In a lot of instances, you realize how important that receiver spot is because of how well Odell played for us. And even though Odell and Allen are different, they're both guys that can win ISOs. They play big at the catch point. They're good separators. They have good aggressive hands. And so I'm really excited about Allen. He's a guy that, when you watch his body of work in Chicago, been able to play all over the formation. When you spend a little bit of time with him, he's an incredibly intelligent player. As soon as we were able to sign him, a lot of people that I respect that have worked really closely with him immediately reach out. And then you just look at the physicality and the nature at how he plays this game. I think he'll bring a toughness and an edge to our offense that's really necessary. And then, with Bobby, kind of a lot of the similar things that I was mentioning with Greg, even though that wasn't a huge position of need, if you will, there are certain players that alter your approach just based on their body of work, their leadership, all the intangibles and the production. And, certainly Bobby was one of those guys. And then I think our guys that have earned the right to be able to, have an educated opinion and an influence on, hey, we're always going to try to listen when you talk to Aaron Donald, when you talk to Jalen and some of the teammates and they understand, how much they appreciate Bobby and want to be able to join forces with him. If it fits for us and we feel like it's a good, good deal, then that's something that we always want to be able to pursue. And that's why we did that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jordan.
Hey, Sean, how you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Especially the second half of the Super Bowl, it looked like Raheem was doing some real creative things with Ernest Jones, but part of that seemed predicated on you guys getting a good rush, but then also Weddle being able to move kind of back and forth closer and further line of scrimmage. Does having Bobby kind of allow you guys to continue to pursue some of that same type of stuff when you're going against a real multiple offense on the other side. And I guess, like, what's possible for this when you guys have traditionally sort of schemed around the inside linebacker position instead of directly at it?
Yeah, I think it's always a product of, all right, what are the best ways? And in those instances, Raheem and the defensive coaches did a great job of manipulating some of the protection rules to get isolations and matchups. And I think when you look at it, when you have those joker type of players, no different than the way that a running back or a tight end that can move all over the formation, or a receiver puts so much pressure on a defense. It's the same thing when you look at some of those edge rushers that can also play inside linebacker, or those inside linebackers that are legitimate threats to be able to blitz. And, it's not a good matchup if they ask a back to be able to protect. And I think both Bobby and Ernest have that capacity and capability to be able to handle a bunch of different roles and responsibilities. And then there's certain things that we can do based on how teams protect and how you want to try to be able to manipulate or get some of those matchups. And I think that's what you saw in the Super Bowl. But when you've got two versatile moving pieces like Bobby and with Ernest, with what we saw, there's a lot of exciting things. And, you could say Justin Hollins and Leonard Floyd are really that force as well. So we've got a lot of guys that bring some versatility that enable us to be able to change the math or dictate the terms, the way that we want, especially when you get in those known passing downs. But those are things that you get excited about working through as a staff now. And when you know that you really have him, now it's about letting that vision that our guys have for him come to life, and it'll be an ever evolving process.
And then that's some of the passing stuff, but as it pertains to the run defense, I mean, Bobby, his statistics, especially against teams who do a lot of different things at the run, like San Francisco, are kind of notable, his history there. So what does that expand in terms of what you guys are maybe able to do as the run games you face kind of maybe become more multiple in the future?
Yeah, I think it's very helpful. I think in a lot of instances, that defense that he's played in, that, he's really made a huge part of why they've been so great, is that you're set up in a manner where you're right in the middle of all that action. And when you've got a guy, you definitely want to fit some of your systems to adjust to that. They started to really mix and multiply some of the looks that they would present front structure wise. So in a lot of instances, Jordan, the things he's been asked to do in Seattle each of the last couple of years with how they've kind of evolved, especially since Jamal Adams got there, there's a lot of concept carryover. And so those are things that we're excited, but his versatility and his familiarity with our division. You mentioned the Niners. I always felt him when you're watching Niners film and you see the presence that he's made, but that's been consistent going against him. And he's going to be an impact player for us, and he's going to help us in so many ways. And that's why, for me, I'm excited to be able to learn from this guy. Like as a coach, you're always excited to spend some time with some of these defensive guys, get an insight to the way that they see some different things that we've done or that we're doing offensively, and how that can help you, just continue to improve your game and your craft by being around great people. And Bobby certainly checks those boxes.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Modesty.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, Kevin.
We see how good outside linebackers, edge rushers benefit from playing with Aaron Donald and vice versa. Is it different? Is there a similar benefit to an inside linebacker playing with somebody like AD?
I think so. I mean, I think, when you look at the penetration, the way he's able to disrupt things, it makes it a lot cleaner for the second and the third levels of the defense. I think we would all be in agreement that what makes Aaron so special, he makes everybody around him better. Coaches, players, everybody. And so he truly is, such a special player. And, you definitely see in some of the attention that he attracts, how it affects and opens up some rushers, like you mentioned, Kevin, but that can be a real benefit based on when you have guys from the second level of the defense that can both cover and rush. And those are going to be things that we're looking to take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. And then a little off the topic of Bobby Wagner, but as you start preparing for next season, and you have guys, Cooper Kupp would be the best example of somebody who had the year of his life. And number of guys on your team. How do you approach sort of figuring out what they can do for an encore, if that's the way to, because
I know what you're saying.
I
I understand what you're saying. I think all those guys that are in that arena, Kevin, are wired intrinsically the right way. I think there's a consistency amongst people that are great at what they do. There's that intrinsic motivation to continually master your craft and never let complacency set in. And then there's just a natural feel for whatever that is that you're doing. Those guys all have great instincts. And so Cooper could play better this year, but he might not have better statistics. The stats are just one part of the evaluation. In a lot of instances, some of the big plays that other guys made were a result of attracting that attention. Similar to what you're saying about Aaron, Cooper became kind of that where, you try to get matchups and you try to get him in favorable spots. But when you're getting into some of these situations where he's dictating to defenders, somebody else has an isolation that they've got to be able to be automatic on, whether that's an Odell Beckham or an Allen Robinson or Van Jefferson or Tyler Higbee or Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. And so they make everyone around them better. But I think they understand, the work that's necessary to continue to stay at that upper echelon. And, that's where you feel really fortunate to work with guys like that. But I think what you don't measure Cooper in is exclusively the statistics. It's really, how do we play good football, snap in and snap out? That might mean another prolific receiving season, and he's going to get his numbers. But, what he did last year was pretty unique, and he might play better next year. It just might not look like, 1,940 yards or whatever he ended up with in the regular season.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Yep. We'll wrap up with you, Gary.
Okay. Hey, Sean, just curious, as a head coach, what's it like to have a roster that has 3 potential Hall of Fame players at all 3 levels on your defense? I mean, that's almost like a video game kind of putting a roster together.
Damn right. We're playing Madden over here, Gary. No, it's great. I think one of the fun things for me is being around these greats. Like I'd mentioned, you learn from them and they make you a better coach. They elevate everyone around them. And, I think it's a real credit too, to the atmosphere that's been created from our players, why Bobby wanted to be here. Obviously he's from LA and all those types of things. But when you get a chance to play alongside Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd and the way Sean Robinson has elevated his game, you look at Jalen Ramsey, there's a lot of guys that you would get excited about wanting to come and partner up with them. And that's a fun thing for me, because I always say you become the company you keep. And when you're around people that are great, they positively motivate you to continue to try to be, great in your own arena within the framework of what you can control. And so it's definitely really exciting. And those guys, when you've got 3 special players, and there's some other great players that are on our defense and on our team that make big time contributions, but those guys are more than capable of carrying the load because of what they've done over the course of their career.
And then you mentioned earlier that, there are certain players, when they're available, you will alter your approach because you can't get them. But was this in any way kind of a direct way to address, what had happened against the 49ers and the Titans, maybe the Packers, and just really shore up that run defense?
When you bring those up, those are definitely things that get you excited about it. I think you always want to look at, all right, how do you try to play your division better? And you mentioned the Niners, and that's a team that's done an excellent job. And Bobby has really shined against them, when they've played the Niners. So there's a lot of reasons to like his game, but he's one of those guys that you're saying, okay, when you just look at it from an outside in perspective, and you're looking at some of the guys, the way that they played at that inside linebacker spot, you would say, I don't know if that's necessarily a need, but Bobby Wagner is an exception to the rule. And all those things that you mentioned are reasons why you can wrap your head around. It makes sense. And I could go on, but anytime that you're able to add a great player with the things that he can provide, both from a production and just an intangibles, and then just getting to know the guy, the more time you spend with him, the more impressive he really is. And I'm fortunate, and I'm looking forward to really just getting started on that work, because I know he is as well. And it's going to be a fun way to positively push each other, and he's going to push his teammates as well.